Good morning and welcome to today's meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, today being Monday, July 17th. Madam Clerk, can we have the call to order resolution, please?
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry be hereby called to order.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Madam Clerk, the adoption of agenda resolution, please.
It's moved by Councillor Landry, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that Council approve the agenda.
Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, the resolution concerning the minutes.
It's moved by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the minutes of the meeting, including the in-camera minutes of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, held June 19th, 2023, be adopted as circulated.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And at this point, we'll be getting ready to move into closed session. Madam Clerk, the motion.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Landry, that Council proceed in camera pursuant to Section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and pursuant to Section 239(2)(k), a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or behalf of the municipality or local board for a matter related to Glen Store Dun Lodge.
Thank you. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried.
Donald, seconded by Councillor Laundrie. Convene an open session without reporting.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. We're going to move into action requests, and we're just waiting on Ben. It would make for a shorter meeting, I'm sure. Introduce a new face that we have sitting to the side. For years, we've had Karen Franklin sitting with us, and today I'd like to ask the CAO to introduce our new Director of Library Services.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So joining us here at our first council meeting for the counties is Rebecca Luck, our new Director of Library Services. I believe some of you may know of Rebecca, but Rebecca joined us during the last week of June. She has been able to join one library board meeting, and we have been getting Rebecca acquainted and familiar with many of the 15 SDG library branches. I think she may have been to all of them so far, but we're happy to have her as part of our senior team in the counties, and she's had a good introduction for the first couple of weeks, so we'd just like to welcome her, and you can put a face to a name. Yes.
So welcome, Rebecca. Would you like to say a few words? or not. Not to put you on the spot, but you are on the spot. Well, we look forward to many successes as well, and but you are with some familiar faces, I know that, so I hope there's a level of comfort, and the level of comfort I'm sure will elevate as we all get more comfortable with each other. So welcome. And this time we're going to move right into action requests. We're going to jump right in, and Madam Clerk, could I have a resolution for transportation, please?
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry accept a change order from Dalcon Constructors Incorporated for additional improvements in the vicinity of the Hoople Creek Bridge at their unit prices totaling $151,214.87 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the change order.
Thank you. Mr. DeHaan.
Good Monday morning, everybody. Thank you very much. The details are provided in the report to council, and really what we're doing is just trying to do some work adjacent to the Hoople Creek Bridge work that's going on right now, right in that job site, just to kind of gussy it all up, get it all done up to modern standards. We have the financial capacity to be able to do it, and the prices we did get from the contractor are reasonable and in line with what we would expect for this kind of work. So just an expansion of kind of what's going on there right now. So that's what we're looking for council's approval for.
Thank you. Questions, comments for Mr. DeHaan? Seeing none, we've all heard the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, the second item for Mr. DeHaan.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Vino, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry authorize the Director of Transportation Services to purchase a conflict warning system from Stinson's ITS based on their submitted quotation of $29,369.76 plus HST.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan.
Thank you. We talked about this one at length at our last meeting, so I won't go into it unless there's some specific questions about the system itself. Ultimately, this quotation, with council's approval, we'll order it and have it installed, I'm sure, in the next little while. At which point we hope to see some positive impact from this. We'll call it an innovative and different type of solution for this intersection. And I can say also, I should say that my county engineering colleagues look forward to our install, and they want to come and check it out in the fall whenever it's operational. So looking forward to doing that with council support.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Questions, comments? I do want to weigh in. I'm looking forward to the lack of impact to this installation, but I'm also looking forward to the innovative approach that we're taking to mitigate any future occurrences at that intersection, and maybe this will be something that others will take on and see as a success story. So to that, I appreciate all the work that's gone in to get to this point. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. And to the resolution referring to the guide rail tender.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Peninsula Construction Incorporated for guide rail replacement at their unit prices totaling $298,100 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract and change order.
Mr. DeHaan.
Thank you. Back to guide rail again, but this is our general guide rail contract that we put out on an annual basis within budget, and any chance we get, we try and recover costs. And I can say that even though when we wrote this report, we had a certain amount we knew that we were going to get back through cost recovery, but I've been told just recently that we actually got another big one that we were able to find and able to get some more money back. So that'll generate a greater surplus here, and that's really what. So we're always watching the surplus versus the expense on this one, and doing our best to recover costs where we can.
Thank you. Questions, comments from Mr. DeHaan? Yes, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Just how much guardrail does this get us? Well, it's just a number, and it doesn't mean anything to me, and I'm just curious if it's 10 miles of guardrail or 1,000 feet. I don't know. I haven't got a clue.
Yeah, I'd have to go and look at the tender itself, but I can tell you that whenever the most expensive component of the guide rail is not necessarily the rail and post, but the end treatments that get put on the ends, because those, and a great example actually, if you're in County Road 27 going over the 401 overpass, you can see exactly what it does. Like whenever someone hits the end of it, there's two different types of system. One kinks the guide rail, and that actually is absorbing the energy through that kinking. The other one it's called an extruder type of system, where the guide rail is like a W shape, if you can imagine it, when you look at it in cross section. And what it does is it like squeezes it and actually compresses it, and it comes out flat. And if you look on County Road 27, you'll see that flattened, curled guide rail. And that end system is designed as a way to absorb energy, and that's what it's doing. It's taking the energy from the accident and flattening and bending that guide rail out of the way, so it absorbs it. So that is the most expensive component, so I don't have an exact answer for you, but I can tell you that that's probably where a lot of the money's going.
Yes, please.
Follow up. Do we, like if somebody has an accident hits those end ones, and if they're very expensive, are we able to recoup that most of the time?
We can when we get an accident report. So it really relies on the OPP, like someone reporting the accident, the OPP going out, making a report, and then we can find that person through that OPP report. And that we can recover it. And I'm sure Rebecca can get into out-of-province recovery and some of the challenges we have there. We really work, we really appreciate the provincial offenses to help us track down some of these ones that are a little more difficult to recover. But we do our best.
Thank you. Anything further from Mr. DeHaan? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. We're going to move into bylaws, and Madam Clerk, the resolution pertaining to the tree protection.
It's moved by Councillor Landry, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that bylaw number 5408, being a bylaw to adopt policy 2-5, tree protection policy, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Mr. DeHaan.
Thanks. We talked about it at our last meeting, so this is just kind of that formal adoption of this policy.
Questions, comments? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm just curious with regards to tree planting on roadsides to mitigate blowing snow. Is that embedded in any other policy? And if not, could it? I mean, I'd like to see a more sort of formalized plan with regards to that?
Through you, Mr. Warden, and not to take away the thunder of that question, but we are planning, we made a commitment to come back to council on what our 5-year plan looked like, some of the successes we've had this year. That's scheduled for our August meeting. That was supposed to be a quieter meeting, so perhaps we can revisit that at our August meeting, and if there's some more formality or, council wants to see something a little bit more concrete in terms of the plan and what we're intending to do, that's probably the best time to talk about it, if I may.
Thank you for that question. Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And Madam Clerk, referring to the housekeeping amendment, Mr. Young.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Vino, that bylaw number 5409, being a bylaw to adopt official plan amendment number 20 to the official plan of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Warden Fraser. This is our annual update of kind of minor changes and corrections to the county official plan. There's a couple dozen been circulated to the municipalities, out to the public. We had a public meeting chaired by Warden Fraser, and no objections received or comments received in general. We're recommending council approve the bylaw.
Thank you. Questions, comments referring to this amendment? I will just weigh in. It was, I think someone reminded me, maybe it was Councillor Bergeron, it was a 9-minute meeting. It went fairly quickly, but it was quite a bit of material covered, and kudos to you, Mr. Young, and everyone that worked with you on that to align that and to make those corrections and to make sure those things that were missed were included. It was surprisingly a lot of information in 9 minutes, and I appreciate that. So, to that, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Before I ask for the consent agenda resolution, any comments from directors, managers that they'd like to weigh in with? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, the resolution, please.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Boards and committees. The Warden's report. This past Saturday was a very nice day. The weather was just perfect. Barely many beads of sweat broken, but I had the opportunity to attend a celebration of the great river, the St. Lawrence River in South Dundas, down at the waterfront in Morrisburg, along with our Councillor St. Pierre. I'm not sure how long Councillor St. Pierre remained there, but it was a wonderful start to a day. And maybe Councillor St. Pierre, I know it's my report, but if you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, it was a great day. I was there for a couple hours, and I was amazed of how many OPG was there doing a presentation on their turbines and their operation, and I was amazed at how many kids went up. Was amazed by the operation of how hydro gets developed really through our water system and whatnot. And the RCMP had their big boat there, which was a hit. The OPP had their boat as well, and South Nation was there. So it was a nice day. It was a great day. It was well attended, and it was just nice to see. So we appreciate you attending as well on behalf of the counties.
It was certainly my pleasure. Thank you. And then as well, I had an opportunity to be with Councillor Densham at the opening of the Avamore Fair, and it's I want to call it the Avamore Fair, but that's where we were. But the fair in North Stormont has a long history that I was made aware of, as many of our local fairs have long histories, and it was certainly a wonderful morning. And again, to do the same, I'll allow Councillor Densham to say a few words about that.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, it was a great day. It's a 163-year tradition of the fair, and actually the 75th year of the location that we have in Avonmore, where the gates were actually dedicated 75 years ago as well. I worked the gate Saturday morning, letting people in, and normally they give you a pouch full of armbands, and I went through that pretty quickly, and we had to dip into another one. So in the band the night before, we sold out. So I think a lot of people are looking to celebrate together. It's a great community event, and I know a lot of other communities have fairs and stuff. So anticipate a good turnout, because I think people are ready to get together again as they were in Avonmore.
Thank you, and I'm remiss to neglect Councillor Landry wasn't able to attend, but Councillor Densham sent your regrets. Yeah, and to that, just to take full advantage of this spot, the Avonmore Fair is the first time I've been on the site for the fair at least in Avonmore, and when I was walking around waiting for the opportunity to speak. At the opening, someone hollered at me. A resident from Winchester was at the fair. And I asked the question. I said, "Oh, you're here at the fair. What's going on?" He said, "I was just checking out things to do with my family, and the Avonmore Fair popped up, and here we are." So it speaks to that and the enjoyment there with his young family. And also, there was another person of notoriety there that I happened to bump into. Our Grand Chief Abram Benedict was in attendance with his brother and their families, and I quizzed him as I'd like to find out how people think, and his thoughts were small community fair. It's enjoyable, easy, and the kids really do enjoy the opportunity to have freedom to run around. So it was a very nice morning for that. Recently, I attended the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus with our CAO, Ms. Adams, and the discussion, the lengthy discussion, was about 7 and 7, the housing initiative, and the funding of the project management team, which is a group from EORN, and the funding of that team. And it was a lengthy discussion, but we finally got to the point where we've agreed to use the Special Projects Fund to allow the EORN project management team to come up with a work plan and a budget that they can present at an upcoming EOWC meeting for the implementation of the 7 and 7 project. So that was a big step. There was lots of planning in the background, but now this is I really do think the first step in the rubber hitting the road on that project. I'm not sure that I need to go into all the letters that were submitted, but there were many, many letters submitted to Queen's Park looking for support in different projects throughout, and more so, I think the letters were trying to bring recognition of the struggles that we all face in Eastern Ontario with infrastructure, housing, water, just OMPF funding and the like. It was quite a laundry list of letters of support that had been sent out. I hope that they fall on ears that aren't deaf. I'll move over to the Joint Liaison Committee. Do I have someone to speak to that? No meetings? The Library Board, I don't believe we've had a meeting since. The Police Services Board, any meeting, any updates from anyone?
Well, the meeting we attended was relatively routine in terms of the stats that Inspector Mark Hemrick delivered to everybody. And well, I guess there's one thing that was that's different annually. There's a community initiative that they give to different organizations, the donations. And there was about, how many, do you remember? About 8? 5 or 6, yeah. If anybody wants to know how much money was allocated to different organizations, I'm sure Kimberly would be happy to give you that information. But other than that, it was pretty routine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGillis. Eastern Ontario Health Unit, any updates? Councillor Lang, any update on Glen Store Lodge besides?
Thank you, Mr. Morden, and through you. Keep it fairly short. We did have a meeting since our last council meeting here, but the majority of the meeting was reviewing the same staffing and service review that we've all heard this morning, and as well as touring the facility.
Thank you, Councillor. St. Lawrence River Institute, thank you. Raise and South Nation Source Water Protection, Councillor Bergeron.
Okay. At the last meeting, we learned that stormwater no longer can be directly discharged into surface water that is anywhere near water intake for drinking water. It now has to go into a stormwater management facility, otherwise a pond. And one example was when they built the new Ford plant near Castleman. Because of the amount of roof and pavement, they had to build a huge pond to filtrate any water that comes from any rainfall that we have. Another topic that came up was there was an objection to 3 lots per farm, which we know isn't going to happen, but the objection surprised me in that she mentioned the farmers were worried about the water supply to their cattle if, 3 lots were allowed per farm. And I mentioned to her that whether it's 3 lots per farm or a subdivision with 100 houses with 100 wells, it's still the same aquifer. And so it really doesn't matter the location, it's from the same water supply. And at that point, Alison McDonald informed us that there is an ongoing water resource study to assess wells and the replenishing of aquifers, which is really important because Those of us that depend on wells, we need to know how much water is being used and how much is coming into the system in the aquifer. So there's a recharge research. But on that point, I said today's weather is very challenging. With the droughts that we're having, they may be doing a study now about replenishing. That doesn't mean that's what it's going to be in the future. And that was our meeting until September.
Thank you, Councillor. There's nothing about the my involvement in the municipal advisory of the Algonquin land claims. There's nothing to report. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, nothing to report. Regional Incentives Program Approval Committee, nothing to report at this. And finally, the Social Development Council, nothing to report. So thank you. We'll move right into key information. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Excuse me.
No, it's not with regards to the Social Council. It is, if you don't mind, I just have something very quick to say about Roma.
Yes, please do.
As you know, I sit on the Roma board, and I just wanted to mention that Roma is strongly encouraging rural municipalities to look at the, now it's gone right out of my head, the Housing Accelerator Fund, which has, I think, a deadline that's fairly short, but is encouraging all municipalities to actually have a look at it. And if there is any interest on behalf of municipalities, I can put you in touch with staff at Roma who will help answer questions and facilitate an application. So there are resources there. Thank you.
Thank you. And we open it up now. Councillor Landry.
Sorry about that.
So I did look into it, and maybe, Karma, if you are with respect to sitting with Roma, it's just that a lot of the timelines in the Accelerator Fund is really hard to reach with our small rural communities. And right now, at first, there was thoughts of really engaging and getting our people to start looking into it, and then it kind of went on a low because of the smaller communities, and we can't attain those numbers. But I'd be curious to see if there's anybody that do come up with a plan that would work. I'd be interested in listening. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, key information reports, Mr. DeHaan.
Okay, thank you, Council, and this is really an expansion on the discussion we had at our last meeting. Hopefully answered some of the questions that were brought up, and again, what we're... all right. Why is this going? Wait a second, sorry. My apologies. Clicked the wrong one. Why can't I find the mouse? There we go. Is that what I opened up? No. My apologies. My slideshow is not working for whatever reason, so I will, essentially it's a discussion of the report, so we'll go through that. So what we're doing today is talking about the costs associated with the staffing proposal, the impacts to the levels of service that the increased staffing would provide, and the risks associated with some of those with the proposal itself. For us, our winter recruitment is going to start in about a month from now, and so the urgency of actually getting some discussion direction with council is starting to gain momentum for us. So really what we'd hope to do is, depending on the feedback we receive from council at this meeting, is come back with some kind of request for firm direction from council at the August meeting. Again, the recommendation that we're proposing to council is to retain the 7 seasonal truck drivers that we have hired for winter maintenance and hire an additional truck staff member through the year. So that creates a balanced staff of 8 staff persons per patrol, and we have 4 patrols. Our current level is 6. In terms of direct labor costs, and these are provided in Table 1 of your report, we've talked about it at our during our last meeting, but ultimately what this direct labor cost would be for hiring an additional 5.3 full-time equivalent staff members, and the 5.3 staff members comes from the net increase as a result of retaining the 7 staff that we have through the winter months for the entire year, plus the additional staff members. So that's why it's a weird number, but ultimately the increase is equivalent to 5.3 staff members. That total cost for 5.3 staff members is just shy of $400,000 in total, and that works out to be $100,000 per patrol. Like I note in Table 1, we have what the hourly rate is per staff member per our collective agreement, and then we have the hourly rate when we include the cost of benefits to have that staff member working for us, and work hours per year and all that. So that's where that's derived from, a relatively straightforward way to calculate that. In terms of the actual impact to budgets, what we were demonstrating and hopefully provided council with additional information that they were looking for in Table 2 is just what those activities that we essentially have the budget we need to do those activities, but the challenge that we have is we don't have the actual resources to do those activities. And that's continued to be our struggle. And we've provided a highlight of those, we'll call them operational activities that are outside of the winter months, because the winter months we've already essentially got the staffing model covered for because we're doing it right now. But these are these activities that we actually do not have these staff members, these additional staff members doing work for. And as council is able to see in that summary of Table 2, we have more than sufficient surplus. On average, we're essentially at $600,000 in surplus per year. That's averaged over the last 4 years. 2020 was a little bit of an anomaly there, where we did end up in a deficit, $100,000 deficit. But what's not included in Table 1 is that we actually had a surplus of $800,000 in winter maintenance, and it was a very oddball year for multiple reasons. The first one was COVID, and COVID created some ridiculous inefficiencies in terms of how we were able to work, because we had to isolate staff completely from one another, and there were some challenges with being able to operate efficiently. The second thing was during that year, our last time the plow ran in the winter was the 1st of March, so we had a very, very short winter, which was fortuitous from the fact that it was a pandemic, and we had some serious concerns with staffing shortages, challenges, and people's ability to be able to work because of those isolation times, all those kinds of things. But I guess the point being is that year, even though the activities that I've highlighted in Table 2 do show a deficit at the end of the year, we still operated in a surplus. Another budget impact that we really wanted to highlight to council in this report, and hopefully provided good information for, is that this additional labor force that we're proposing is going to really provide us some additional opportunity to do some in-house work. And what that allows us to do is do more with the existing funding levels we have, which is always the big challenge that municipalities are faced with. The example we provide in the report is in 2021, we did 2 relatively comparable reconstruction activities, and some of the council that were around the table at the time may remember those 2 construction jobs that were going on almost simultaneously. One was Martintown, which was contracted out to a large excavating contractor. The other one was St. Andrews West reconstruction, which was done with in-house resources. Again, projects, although they were different locations, a relatively similar scope and similar length. At the end of the day, once the projects were done, the St. Andrews reconstruction cost per meter was about $900 per running meter, whereas Martintown, the per meter cost for that entire reconstruction project was $1,800. So Martintown was about $900 per meter less than we had with the contracted cost. Cross culverts are another great example of where we see significant savings compared to outsourced type of work. Generally speaking, and it's very easy to say, we save at least 15% per pipe installed, and that's a very conservative estimate when we look at costs that we've incurred to have this done by contractors versus our in-house cost to do that work. Council also asked about overtime and what this additional staffing resources would do for overtime. Right now, we accumulate approximately 4,300 hours of overtime per year. That's combined, all staff. May seem like a large number, but don't forget it's spread out over a bunch of staff members, and if they have to work a Saturday and a Sunday because of a storm, there's 12 hours per person per day. So it does add up fast, and most of that overtime is accumulated in the winter months. So, and in the winter months, again, as a reminder, we already have 7 staff working for us seasonally, so the net effect is 1 additional staff person. So the ultimate impact on overtime in winter months is not going to be very significant, and I think it's important that we're very clear with council on that one, because we can't prevent the Saturday and Sunday snowstorms when we need to call in staff outside of their normal working hours. But 1 extra staff person does provide some additional resource for us and does provide support. So one thing that if we compared it to the winter we just had, we would have eliminated 3 weeks of overtime that we had to incur. And that was just due to resets. Whenever people had to be called in on their day off to come in and then stay at home because they had to reset per the hours of work legislation. So we had to pay them to stay at home to be able to reset their hours of work to come back in and drive the plow again. So having that extra person would actually, instead of having to call people in, would have allowed us to have a staff resource available to be able to handle those instances. The other thing too is that it does provide us a little bit more flexibility to allow vacations during winter months, which in turn relieves some of the pressures we have during the summer months. Because I'll give an example right now in Green Valley, at our patrol in Green Valley currently, we've got 1 staff person who's away due to an illness. We have a vacancy right now, so out of the 6 staff members, we've already got 2 that are gone for the foreseeable future. Or 2 vacancies that are not filled for the foreseeable future. If we dedicate 2 to the mowers, that only leaves 2 staff people left to do all the other work that needs to be done in the patrol. But don't forget, they need to have holidays too. So we have 1-2 staff people on holidays, and all of a sudden you can quickly see how, even though 6 people seems like a lot, when you've got 2 dedicated to mowers and then other people trying to take their vacations around that time and trying to keep those mowers going, how it gets very, very difficult for us to be able to manage other work beyond the very, very bare minimums that we've got to do. In terms of levels of service, and we had a little bit of a discussion on that, and I guess maybe revisiting that discussion as a point of clarity, this provides an opportunity to, and the better way to phrase it is not improve, but rather stabilize the level of service. And what we mean by that is stabilizing it by allowing us to have the staffing levels that we can be assured that we're able to complete those tasks that we've budgeted for and that we're attempting to complete on an annual basis. So I give in the report an example of mowing. So if we had 2 staff members who are on 4x10 work weeks, so that means someone's working 10 hours a day, Monday to Thursday, and 10 hours a day, Tuesday to Friday, we could run the mowers 50 hours a week on regular time, and that would not require us to increase the budget. By doing that, we could complete fence-to-fence mowing in late August, which would be 4 weeks earlier than our current practice. If council said we want to have mowing done late August as an example or as a comparative, for us to put the overtime into that, to be able to do that, it would cost us $70,000 in overtime. So the opportunity to complete the fence-to-fence mowing, which is the level of service we provide in the summer, we're able to complete that earlier. Similar, ditching would have that type of similar impact, where we'd have enough resources to be able to do the work during the summer months, whenever the weather is favorable to do it and the resources are there to do it. Right now, what happens with ditching is that, unfortunately, due to the lack of resources, and coming back to Green Valley is a great example, ditching's about a 2 to 3 week activity for us per patrol. And if we don't have the resources to be able to provide the flagging to help support the grades and moving the equipment around and managing the operations, we have to defer that work until the fall when we have the staff resources available. And then in the fall, we're competing with not only weather, but also with other activities that need to get done in preparation for winter, which is obviously where our biggest time and effort goes to once November starts to roll around. Another question that was asked was, what about equipment, and what kind of equipment would we need to support these staff members? And I'm happy to report to council that there's actually no impact to equipment. We have enough patrol equipment within each of our garages to support the 2 extra staff people. Again, reflecting on wintertime, there's there's only a net effect of 1 additional person across all 4 patrols. So we already have enough plows, is what I'm trying to say. And with our patrol vehicles, we've been investing in our crew cabs and whatnot. So we have the capacity to be able to move the crews around a lot more efficiently than we did, say, 10 years ago when I started here at the county. So we've got the right types of equipment to be able to move the additional patrol staff around. In terms of benefits, the benefit costs, I've highlighted that in Table 1. So those activities and the way we account for the cost of doing the work that we do includes the benefit costs. So when I talk about $100,000 per patrol, that includes cost of labor and cost of benefit for the additional staff. I do want to point out, though, from a health and safety and training perspective, we would need to have an increase in budget, and that's a result of making sure that our staff have the right kind of safety footwear. There's clothing allowances that they have, so making sure we have that right kind of footwear, and that would cost about $3,000 more per year for the additional staff people. And then making sure that we train these staff. We don't want, it's very important for us to continually train our staff, make sure they're up to date in terms of health and safety and different activities that they need to do and understanding why we do some of the things we do. So making sure we have the relevant training budget would necessitate about a $4,000 increase to accommodate all of those staff people. In review of this, we did review a bunch of alternatives, and we did touch on them very briefly, but I would like to go through them again very quickly with council. We looked at the opportunity of increasing outsourcing, so looking at using contractors to do some of these maintenance activities. We talked at our last meeting, and I won't revisit it too in depth, but the challenges South Stormont had, for example, outsourcing plowing and the costs that we're seeing for those types of outsourced activities. And what we see, in my personal opinion, and Derek, you can chime in if you agree or disagree with me, is that, it may on paper sometimes seem less expensive, but the cost and the risks that the contractor kind of build into their cost end up costing generally more at the end of the day from what we see. And so ultimately what I'm trying to say to council is, to me, the current environment is proving that it's more expensive to outsource a lot of these maintenance activities that are very dependent on weather, on collecting animals, dead stock on the side of the road, mowing. Maybe it's cheaper per meter or equivalent per meter, but the cost of actually supervising that activity and running around and making sure it's being done correctly, that's how the county used to do it, and we actually went to an in-house model. And I can tell you, I should say, the way we do our in-house mowing speaks for itself, and the fact that we turned to that in-house model, because that's an activity where I know one example even through this weekend where I got an email from a resident who was very pleased with the outcomes and what they were seeing from our staff and the ability to do the work well. We also looked at a hybrid staffing model, which is more of a phase-in of this type of what we're proposing here. And ultimately, we didn't bring that any further forward. And the reason being is that any less than what's being proposed in this proposal really doesn't provide the resources that we need to improve the timing or improve our ability to efficiently complete any work. It does marginally improve some recruiting success by only having to recruit less temporary staff during the winter months. It does help us marginally, but really it doesn't ultimately resolve that problem, which we know that hiring full-time staff will help resolve the problem of recruiting staff during the winter months. So in conclusion, where Derek and I, in terms of our review of this, and hopefully the information is, we've provided council with some good information here in terms of costs and whatnot. We continue to advocate increasing our staffing resources to 8 full-time staff members per patrol, so that's an additional 2 staff members per patrol full-time. For us, that's going to address the winter vacancy challenges we have and making sure we have the appropriate staffing levels to improve efficiencies and streamline our services. We currently, and I think this is probably the most important takeaway I hope that council gets from this report, is that we currently have that financial capacity to accommodate this expenditure. The budget's there, it's just we don't have the resources to do the budget. And at the end of the day, what this will do is a great benefit for us because it will provide that much needed support we need to our existing workforce, allowing them to have the resources to be able to do the work that we want to do and should be doing, and making sure we've got that capacity to cover whenever we have illnesses, to be able to take vacations, time vacations a little bit more appropriately and things like that. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Warden, for questions or whatnot.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn, for the presentation and for the brevity. It's appreciated. There was a lot of information at the last meeting, and I appreciate the follow-up to this meeting. That is much needed and well appreciated by me, and I'm sure by all of us. But one of the things I think you probably politely didn't mention is that the response that I feel that you sometimes have to react to from us whenever we make demands upon you and your staff about the level of service and why isn't this done, why isn't that done. And I go back to probably about 2012 in my time at the Township Council, and one of the reactions that Council had at the end of the season, it was like, why wasn't this done? And the response from the director, the manager at the time was, I didn't have the staffing to accommodate your wants. And so we had to change our minds at that time to ensure that we supported our desires with our commitment to the project. But anyway, we need to weigh in on this. Questions, comments, thoughts from members of council. Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate the second cut of this. I think it answered a lot of the questions that I had coming in. Do we produce on an annual basis any kind of, and I think this goes to the warden's comments, do we produce like a deficiency report, things that we weren't able to get done and the reason behind it? Because I'd like to be able to say, you know what, it used to be this long, but you know, if we support this, then now it's like this. And the second question I have is, you mentioned the fact that we have surpluses every year because, in part, we're not getting the work done. What are we spending those surpluses on? And is that now going to become a pressure if we're now spending them on getting the work done?
Sorry? Yeah, so in terms of the deficiency report, no, we've never come back to formally report to council in terms of what we weren't able to accomplish here, there, or otherwise. It is, you know, that's the type of performance index we'd like to get to, and it's something I've been looking at for some time. But, you know, I guess maybe a good takeaway from this is that that's something that would be of great value to council, and maybe we should be doing that, is providing council with a little bit more detail in terms of, you know, here's these activities which we're putting a lot of money into, and here's what we're getting from it, and then being able to track that a little more closely, track it with council or provide that information to council a little more closely. So I definitely like that, and I think that that's a good takeaway from this, one way or the other. In terms of where the surplus goes now, so that rolls into, essentially it stays in the department, but it goes to capital works, one way or another, and depending on what that surplus value is, that's where it goes.
Mr. Warren, just the second half of that question, does that now have the potential to create a pressure because we've been enjoying that surplus and using it for capital year over year, but now is that going to create a potential for pressure? Are we going to feel it in terms of a budget ask in future budgets now that we're accurately consuming that surplus or most of it?
I'm going to say no to that, and the reason I'm going to say no is this: council has been phenomenal at supporting our 4-year resurfacing plan, and that's something we've, from staff side, we've really appreciated. And I can say that my colleagues across Eastern Ontario don't get to enjoy that type of support from their councils, like this council has invested in our roadways. So often those surpluses have gone to the above and beyond roads. So consider the 4-year resurfacing plan the absolute needs to do's. We need to do that to keep our system in its current state. Anything we do above and beyond it is gravy. So we have often taken that surplus, and we have never used it to fund the now needs roads. We've always used it to fund and gravy maybe has a negative connotation. It's not intended to be a negative connotation because any extra work we're doing only benefits the system. So we're going to lose that marginal benefit and that ability to do the really nice to do roads, and I say lose, we're not necessarily going to lose it, but our capacity to do those nice to do roads will diminish. But at the end of the day, I don't think it creates any pressure because at a staff level, we're going to come and present, these are the now needs roads. This is that 4-year resurfacing plan we talked about almost on, meeting one. And, I think, again, history has shown that the council around this table has really supported that. And we haven't had to use that surplus to be able to fund that work.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Densham. Further, Councillor St. Pierre.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Warden Fraser. I had a question. You had said that we have enough equipment to sustain the additional staff, but if we're using the equipment more, would that not increase our fleet replacement schedule? Because we're using it more wear and tear.
So I think the biggest one you're referring to there is the mowers. We were talking about increasing the mowers, or you're talking about equipment in general?
Well, equipment in general, we talk about the mowers, but you talk about maybe additional culvert replacements, which is, your backhoes and whatnot, that type of equipment. So if we're increasing in-house, we're increasing the hours on of our equipment. Would that not move up some of our fleet schedule and where we got to spend a little bit more money more frequently?
No, I don't believe so. So the winter maintenance is our largest equipment inventory we have. So it's going to have no impact on that because there's already equipment there assigned to those routes. So nothing there is going to change. We're referring to cross culvert or ditching. We still are doing cross culvert and ditching, and we have crew cabs. So although we're adding 1 or 2 staff, they're still going to be within a crew cab. So we're not adding additional trucks, and the truck would be going to that location anyways. So there'd be no additional wear and tear. As far as the heavy equipment, we don't own heavy equipment, so that's all contracted out. We rent excavators, we rent backhoes. The mowers themselves, we talked about increasing the up to 50-hour a week, but the total time frame for the year doesn't change. All they're doing is we're compressing that time frame. So the number of hours on the mowers and the tractors in a year would remain the same.
And if I can expand on it too, when we look at our replacement of pickup trucks, which would be these crew cabs and whatnot, we're up, 400, 500,000 kilometers by the time we're replacing these pieces of equipment. So, we've achieved pretty good life out of them, and we don't, and I reiterate what Derek said, that we don't see that it's going to add a significant amount of kilometers or shorten that return time on them, or replacement time on them.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. This is a big topic, and I'm looking forward to supportive direction for staff. Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Warden. I'm just looking to get this clarified in my own head. You've mentioned that you demonstrated the cost savings of having the extra employees there working full time. In terms of everything that you mentioned, that the work that they'll be doing, which will save us money and still provide a better level of service. But at the end of the day, it's $100,000 for each garage. That'll be the cost. But the cost savings deducted from all the money we can save having them there, what would be the difference at the end of the day? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to. So we see it as we're able to do more with the funding levels we provide. So the budget, the money that would go towards having these extra staff people around year round, is going to make sure that we're able to spend the money that council has given us to spend on the various activities. So I guess, is it wrong to say we don't really see a cost savings? Rather, it's a, go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I think the cost savings is going to be a byproduct. We have the money in the budget right now to do the work that needs to be done. We don't have the staff to do the work, is where we're at. So all we're asking is for the staff to be able to do the work that we need to do. But the byproduct of that is we would now have enough staff to start doing more work in-house. So we're referring to the $70,000 savings I should say that, we're talking about the weed eating, with $70,000 savings, be able to do more that way. But across culverts, right now the lifespan of the cross culvert is about 50 years. Most of the culverts in SDG were put in 50 years ago. So we're seeing more and more failures every year. And the more you put out to contractors, it's going to be a higher cost, the less you're going to be able to do. The more we can do in-house, the more culverts we can do within a year. So that's things like that, or the urban reconstruction, we can do it cheaper per meter. So by doing stuff in-house, there is more cost savings. There's opportunities we can look at, but we see that more as a byproduct of this proposal and not really the direct result of this proposal. If that answers the question.
Yeah, and you also mentioned the 3 weeks during the winter maintenance for the overtime too, so there's a savings there as well. So, but my question was, at the end of the year, what, with all the different savings that we'd see in-house, what would be the end result in terms of a cost savings as opposed to what would it cost us to have 8 extra employees full-time?
Yeah, it's a challenge to answer that because there's no kind of clear number that I could give to council on that one. And I think it comes back to Councillor Densham, actually, Councillor Densham's point about like the key performance indicators and being able to show council, last year with I'm going to use the exact number out of table 2. So in 2022, we had $1.4 million worth of culverts, drainage, and ditching work that we could do. And in that, we have subcategories of like the culverts, how much we have budgeted for culverts, ditching, how much we have for ditching, catch basin cleaning, and all sorts of different things there. But what we can provide council to provide the information. So backing up, how it would look to council is that, before we had this, we could do 8 culverts per year. And unfortunately, we couldn't spend the $1.4 million. With our extra staff, we spent the $1.4 million, but we did 12 culverts this year. Like, that's the kind of thing that that actually happens. So as we're able to spend that money and we're able to actually do a little bit more, and we're able to do a little bit more because we're saving, if we have the people to do it, we're saving 15% per culvert, so therefore we can do more culverts for the money that council has budgeted for that work. Does that kind of explain it? It's very hard to, like, I could give you the number for 3 weeks of overtime and what that costs, but at the end of, like, the challenging part with that is it's an easy number to give, but I don't know if it's not something I could say, well, that's what we're going to save every year, because it really depends on, if this region has no snow between December and February, I'll have a huge surplus for council. There's so much that depends on what's happening out there that it's very hard to quantify some of these things whenever it's really more just having the resources available to be able to do the stuff.
Thank you. We're going to move to Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I can see the rationale for this proposal. It's kind of fallen into place with your second round of information. But the one thing that I would like to see, because I know I'll use for an example the wait list for ditching and some of those ditches along county roads that affect people's properties. And I know that, a resident just outside of Maxville was told, well, it's probably going to be a couple of years until we can actually get to do this work. So, so if there are those additional resources will affect those timelines in a positive fashion, and if that can be indicated to council in timely fashions or in regular reporting, then I think that would demonstrate the value 100%. Thank you.
And if I may, just going back to the report we provided to council in June, and in table 3 of that report, and I reattached it just for easy reference, we did provide some concepts in terms of how we could report some of this stuff back to council, because I agree with you. I think that's very important. It's one thing to say this is great and XYZ is going to happen because of it, but I really do, a big takeaway for me from the strategic planning session was that council very supportive, but also wants to see the results, and that's what we provided in table 3, that measurable results, and how we wanted to report back to council, and certainly if that's a key consideration that is part of the approval of this, like, you know, rest assured, that's certainly something we want to deliver on.
Thank you, Ed. Anything further, seeing that there's some hesitation to speak up, I think, on this. I think this is a sea change for us if we when we go down this path. And again, just to make it go back to my local experience, I remember one day I was traveling around with the director of Public Works at the time, and my comment was this, and his response was, "I only have 6 people. I can only do so much with 6 people." And I said, "But we need this done, and we need that done, and we need that done." So I think this is what is being presented to us, is that we have a level of service that we expect. But if you only have, and I know it's not 6 people, this is a local thing I'm speaking of, if you only have 6, there's only so many things you can get done, no matter how much we budget for or how much we approve in the budget. We need to have staff that are experienced, staff that are well-trained, and staff that remain. To bring someone in-house every 6 months is not an advantage to us. It's a disadvantage to us, as we all know that. So I think the next step, if there's no more questions or comments, is that we look forward to a resolution coming forward in support of this. Do I see a nod of heads? Thank you. The next information, next KIR is the summary, Mr. DeHaan, of the cleanup.
I think all the information's there. If there's any questions, I'm sure Derek would be happy to answer them. But quite an undertaking, and I think just ultimately, you know, thanks to all our staff that work so hard to not only respond in such a timely manner the day of, but also just the effort since then to clean it up and get to where we are now.
Thank you. And then the KIR on the street sweeping.
Again, it's kind of all there, and if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
I just want to make a comment. It was I had firsthand look at the advantage of the increased level of service there, and it has served. I'm sure it served us all well to see that, and it's appreciated. And as your update speaks to the higher level of training for our staff to ensure that it stays on the road longer, and another efficiency to be found. I appreciate that. SDG 27 at Glen. I'm sorry, Councillor McDonald.
So will the sweeper be going out during the summer at all to places like where, I'm just using an example, the Highland Games, or cleaning up before big events?
It's getting some minor service done to it right now. It will be available here by the middle of this week, and there'll be an email going out to your respective directors there telling us available if they need it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, and Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just one thing I want to understand a little bit better. So in all, one of the statements here is, in all, the sweeper unit was not operational for a full 20 days due to mechanical issues. This is a new sweeper, is it not? Care to comment on that?
Just because they're new doesn't mean they're better, I guess you'd say. We had a lot of frustration, yes. We had a lot of hair pulling. It was down sometimes for a week waiting for one part, sometimes down for a week waiting for diagnosis. That's part of the reason why we're sending our mechanic down to the actual manufacturer to get in-depth training on it, that we're hoping to get away from these delays. We're hoping we can diagnose the problem, fix the problem within a day rather than 5 days. But yes, no, those numbers are correct, and we did a lot of hair pulling to keep it going.
Excuse me, Councillor Landry.
Through you, Mr. Warden. I think Derek's already heard this comment made, but just to make it aware around the table, so the sweeper is basically dealing with all 6 of our municipalities, going through the town to town. But I would just like to get a schedule done where I feel that if one that was done last doesn't keep staying last in there. So I did. Unfortunately, we were last, so maybe that's one reason why. But no, I'm just saying there's residents that reached out to me, and I said, yeah, but it would be nice to say, you know what, we're going to be moving up the ladder and just making it sort of that fairness process as we move forward, but something that we could schedule and work to, and I'm sure you already have sort of a way it's going to work, but as long as it's fair for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing further to the street sweeper, we'll move to the SDG 27 at Glen Road.
All right, we got her. Okay, very quickly for council, I'll just go over, this was something that started actually with the previous council, and we were able to, we got some funding to be able to do a little bit more of an in-depth review. Just backing up a little bit, Glen Road and County Road 27, it's north of the 401, south of County Road 19. It's a intersection between ourselves and a township of South Glengarry Road. The aerial view is here provided. A street view looking south from the intersections provided there, and you can if you look very closely, you can see a car at the bottom of that hill. And interestingly, if you want to have a little fun on Google, like you can look at the street view and you can actually see when that car disappears as you disappear from the intersection. But that's okay. That happens in hills all over the place, and it needs to be. It's where those critical decision points are, or that it's not so far or so close together when you can't see one car to the next where it's a problem. So, but it does kind of show you how you can see a car, you can see a car, you can see a car, and then you disappear from the view of the car, that car disappears from your view. So as just very quickly, the history here, we've reviewed this intersection many times within our office, and it has been occurring since before I was even sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in right now. The findings, and that's not to say it's not important that we aren't reviewing it to make sure, just based on current standards, current traffic counts, that things haven't changed. But our findings have been consistently that a four-way stop has not been warranted, and that sight lines are marginally acceptable. And what that means is really, whenever they are marginally acceptable, they meet the standard, but they don't give you a lot of room for error. And I think that to speak to some of the challenges that we've seen there, that's probably the issue that we often see. So we have had many requests for safety improvements from residents over the years. There are safety features that are currently installed there. We do have intersection ahead signs on both approaches. There are optical speed bars on Glen Road at the stop sign, so those are the lines leading up to the stop sign. There are oversized stop signs at the intersection, and there's a flashing stop ahead sign on Glen Road, which is a little bit unique. I can't think of one similar to that elsewhere on a local roadway. So council gave us, we budgeted some money in last year to do a topographic survey, legal survey, to understand where the property boundaries were, and then from that actually create a plan and profile of the roadway, because the way we have been doing intersection reviews there is just by the visual measurement method, and that's where we were determining that it was marginally acceptable. Since the last time it's been studied in depth, it has been resurfaced, so it was a good chance to take a look to see what changes, if any, were there. So what council is looking at here in this slide is the 80 kilometer per hour design, and the red line shows, and it's actually covering both of them, because that really is illustrating that the design speed, so what would it be in a computer model to make it an 80 kilometer per hour design speed versus what it looks like in actual based on the survey. So the dash line and the solid line are pretty much underneath that. They're within a very acceptable difference. So it demonstrates that that curve, as it is right now, that vertical curve, does meet an 80 kilometer per hour design standard, which has been the design standard of the county since well before I have started here. And so we also, part of this assignment was to look at 80 kilometer per hour versus 100 kilometer per hour. So what does it mean if we actually wanted to improve the visibility here so that someone traveling 100 kilometers per hour could see within the appropriate sight distances? So this is the 100 kilometer per hour design profile. So that's what the center line would need to look at elevation-wise for 100 kilometers per hour. This red is what I just showed you on the previous slide, that 80 kilometer per hour. And what that means is all of this in here would need to come out to be able to get to 100 kilometer per hour design speed. And that's about 2 meters worth of material that needs to come out of that hill. 2 meters is over 10 feet of material. So not only do you have to take it out of the roadway itself, but you've got to then tie into the surrounding land as well. So it's quite a significant undertaking to get to that design standard. So this is kind of where staff are right now on this one. Certainly look for council's direction if there is a desire to take this further. You know, from purely the liability perspective, we do have a defense against liability. It meets our design standard, 80 kilometers per hour, and that no further work is warranted at this time. There are safety features out there that are appropriate for the intersection as it is. This may be something council wants to actually revisit at some point in the future, and I'm just talking about design standards here. What council may want to consider is going to a higher standard whenever we're reconstructing or we have a cross-section intersection that's proven deficient based on current design standards. One of the things we have to pay attention to is the balance of consistency versus road safety. If we start building 100 kilometers per hour, that's what the drivers will expect out there. You know, the more comfortable, the easier it is to drive at a higher speed, the higher speed people tend to drive to. And I know it sounds like a little bit of a broken record when I keep saying that, but that is the honest to goodness truth. If you ever are not paying attention to the speed limit and you're just kind of driving to what feels comfortable, sometimes you'll find, whoa, I'm really above the speed limit. But on a road which is, you know, a little bit more of a tighter feel, you end up driving a little more defensively, a little more conservatively, and tend to be closer to what the actual design or posted speed limit is. So, I guess that's kind of where we are right now at a staff level, and really look forward to any input that council might have on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. So, Mr. DeHaan's looking for input, questions, comments. Councillor Lang, then Councillor Dencham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys, for doing this, I guess. We have had residents that have expressed some interest in seeing it being safer. One of the things I find as well is with that corner is when you get to the stop sign and the visibility is borderline, one of the issues there is that there's no visibility until you're at the stop sign. You're coming in blind, and once you're at a complete stop, then you have your little, so you have very, you know, that nobody likes to stop too long. So you have very little time, they look both ways, and if you miss anything, you haven't had a chance to see it ahead of time, so that it's that one look and then you're moving forward. And the other thing that I'll mention is it's not designed for 100 kilometers an hour, but we all know that most people are doing close to 100 kilometers an hour on our county roads in some areas. Not all, but in some areas, most people, like, you know, we all drove in this morning. I'm sure we all drove on a county road, and we might not all been at 80 on the way in here this morning. You know, like it's a fact of life nowadays. But anyway, I'm not pushing harder one way or the other. I just know that it is an issue, and I'm not sure what to do, because it would be a big job to cut that hill down. And then the banks are going to be extremely high on each side. I mean, the house on the west side is close to the road. It's right there. You're going to be affecting the house. Maybe have to put a retaining wall, who knows. But anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Dencham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a question. Has any thought been given to reducing the speed to 60 kilometers an hour for a short period of time around that intersection, or is that not recommended?
We haven't really kind of done an in-depth review of that one, but my initial thought of it, because it has kind of been talked about very, very casually, if I may. I'm not a fan of reducing speed limits artificially low whenever it's not supported. Like if this was a 60 kilometer per hour curve, let's say, or we saw that it was deficient at 80 kilometers per hour, I would then say, yeah, we need to lower the speed limit here, and then figure out what we're going to do. Like I don't believe it's appropriate to be artificially lowering speed limits lower than what the design is, because number one, people aren't going to follow it, or you get that difference between the people going 100 versus the people who are, oh, it's 60, I am going to slow right down. So that's a 40 kilometer per hour difference between the two. So it's a little bit, and then it's not consistent with the rest of the way the county road system has been designed, because this is not the only curve at 80 kilometers per hour. So that's why I would lean on the side of no, that's not the. It's the right thing to do whenever we have a situation where we know it's deficient and we need to take more corrective action, but need to implement something quick to be able to improve the safety quickly.
Further comments for Mr. DeHaan? So I think that you're looking for direction, some supportive direction.
Well, I guess like the fact that I'm not hearing that there's any desire to take this further tells me that kind of where staff landed on this one is kind of the will of council, and that will, you know, we have some good information here, and that's how we'll respond to people that kind of bring forward questions. That it does meet, we did do an in-depth review, it does meet a certain standard, and that we have no direction to do anything further at the current time. And I do think it's important that we do relook at our design standards just to have that discussion. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. But I think more than anything, it's a good time to take a look at them again as we have some reconstruction projects coming up.
Okay, and before I close it off, Councillor Lang.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to come in twice there, but maybe the next time the road is under major reconstruction, maybe, you know, we could revisit it again at that time, you know, but it would be a shame because it's just been paved to tear it up now.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Lang. So just I'm just going to take a quick scan around the room to make sure that there aren't those that are in opposition to continuing down the path that we are on. Are we all comfortable with what has been presented? Okay, thank you. So that's your direction then, Mr. DeHaan. And the last key information report is the administrative update from our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So just briefly, in the first section, it just highlights some of the meetings during the past month. If we want to take a look at key dates moving forward, County Council is on August 28th. AMO is that week that we normally would have had a council meeting. And on September the 18th, we're planning an employee recognition barbecue following our next council meeting. And AMO is August 20th to 23rd, and the Ontario East Municipal Conference is September 6th to the 8th. We are also going to be working with the warden to plan his warden's banquet, likely to occur in November. So we'll have that on our next update just to get it on people's calendars. On the human resource side, we are still actively going through the process to recruit the manager of human resources. So that process is going very well. I'm hoping we'll have some information for council within the next couple of weeks. We are still awaiting a little bit of information from CUPE to be able to work through our collective agreement that expired at the end of March. And just as a brief note, the organization undertook annual performance reviews during the month of June, so everybody's been busy wrapping those up. So that's my update for this morning.
And I'd just like to include, thank you. I'd just like to include, Madam CEO, the attendance at the 45th birthday of Dundas Manor that was held recently, and Madam CEO was in attendance at that, and had an opportunity to bump into Mr. Boland, Charlie Boland, and some other administrative staff from Dundas Manor, and it was another warm day in July. It was too hot for me, that's for sure. But anyway, saying all that, we'll slip right down to number 17, Madam Clerk, the ratification bylaw.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that bylaw number 5410, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And the adjournment by resolution, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Densham, that council adjourn to the call of the chair.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Ladies